So for my cultural immersion journal, I chose to do Latinos and the Hispanic culture. So the first activity that I chose was to do a tour of like a Latino or Hispanic community. And so for question one, what I did was kind of just drove around a different part of Marietta that is more Hispanic. Some of the signs are in Spanish. Some of the buildings I noticed were a little bit more run down. And then, some of the buildings, if they were like restaurants or something, they had like brighter colors. Um, and then also, something that I have noticed in areas like that, there's usually a laundromat. So I thought that was interesting. Um, and so the reason I selected that is because I've noticed that a Hispanic culture is in a lot of different suburb areas. Um, but I've never actually like taken the time to drive around and like notice those things and observe all of those different details. And like notice the different parts of their culture and how that comes out in how the buildings are like decorated on the inside, or different things like that. So feelings and reactions. Actually, one of the things that I went and did while I was on my little tour was went to a taco shop. And so some of the stuff, it was like we got authentic tacos, authentic Mexican tacos. So there was no cheese on there. It was just cilantro, salsa, and then the meat and the tortilla. So that was really cool because all of the stuff on the menu was in Spanish, and it was just like a small, like really small building that only, a couple of people could sit in, and they were, they have like specific drinks that are Hispanic, things that are written in Spanish, and, all of the workers predominantly speak in Spanish, like, as opposed to when you go to Moe's, they usually speak English and they're probably white. Um, so then the value of this experience as a counselor is just being able to kind of see how different the um, demographic is in a Hispanic area as opposed to like a more like white ritzy area. It's just being able to see how some of the people do live. Some people live in more rundown areas of the suburbs, but if they are more so connected to their culture in those areas, then that's more important for especially Hispanics, because they're so family oriented. And so it's important to see where people are coming from. And then so the second thing that I did was I talked with at least two friends from Hispanic culture. And so I asked them kind of what their views of being Hispanic in America are. So one of them, she is Puerto Rican, and so she comes off as white. So she really hasn't had any, like many race issues. The only thing that she really comes upon is her last name. And so her last name is Oquendo, but it's, in English, a lot of people pronounce it Oquendo because of the Q. And so she, is trying to figure out how to kind of embrace her culture more because she feels like hers was more so suppressed, living in, suburbia of like a different part of Florida. And so she's proud of being a Latina, but she also has seen that it is frowned upon, and that, there is so much oppression and that, other people see Americans as kind of this holier than thou rather than, accepting other people from other cultures and embracing them. And then my other friend, he is Cuban. And so he was raised, both parents Cuban, grandparents Cuban, like straight from Cuba. And so obviously they haven't been able to go to Cuba and visit some of their family. But he grew up learning Spanish. And then, as he continued to grow up, his family like stopped doing as many of like their Hispanic traditions as they were, just because they moved out of, like his parents had moved out of like a more like Cuban areas. They moved into kind of a better like middle class area, so they were surrounded by more white Americans. And so, he also can pass as white, but his name, again, is Casman, and so that's not typically an American or English American name. So, let's see. But doing that, I, really enjoy hearing from my friends about their Hispanic culture and how they're embracing it. What they enjoy about it, what they've learned about it, and how they've experienced different things, because I don't experience things that they do because I'm not Hispanic. So then, feelings and reactions, these are things that I've never really asked them. It's not something that I've necessarily like thought too deeply about, because I'm just like, oh, they're my friends, I love them. I know they're Hispanic, but that doesn't make me love them any less. But let's see. The value of this experience. So just being able to see how different people experience different things. A lot of oppression is happening, and so it's important to recognize that whenever you have a Hispanic client and they express certain concerns to you. And you can't just brush it off and be like, oh no, like that's normal, because it's not okay and it's not acceptable. And so that can be like the root of a lot of issues within families and within different, just like different communities. And so that is really important to recognize. So then the next thing that I did was I read some news articles voicing Hispanic culture's concerns. So again, oppression. I read one specific article that was very alarming to me about how these Hispanic women were detained in ICE, or I don't know if it was detained, but they were in ICE, and they were operated on without consent. And so I was, really disturbed, because these women were just so mistreated and nobody was like, alarmed about it. So I just, really recognize that there's a lot of issues that are going on with politics and Hispanic people regarding immigration and like not being documented and stuff like that, where their privileges they don't have any. It doesn't look like they have any, and then they're being revoked, and there's just so many things that they're not allowed to do because they're not American citizens. So also I'm very frustrated because, they are lacking opportunities, which a lot of them have come here for specifically. So that's kind of frustrating, because it's like you come here for a job and freedom and you're not getting any of that. You're not being able to be treated that way. And I understand that there's laws and stuff like that need to be addressed. But, it's just hard to talk about that kind of thing. And so then as a counselor, I can see the hurt and the pain that these people are experiencing. Of course, I cannot understand it because that's not something that I've ever experienced. But it's just, really heartbreaking and angry. I'm angry about seeing and hearing these things because it's just like, you know, there's just not enough that, like, it seems like we can do to be able to help these people besides voting for the right people. So then the final thing that I did was I went to eat dinner at my boyfriend's mom's house. And so she's Colombian. And so she doesn't own a microwave, but she fed us like a Colombian meal. She gave us some homemade salsa, homemade guacamole, grilled some carne asada on the grill. And, we just like talked about her family and so just being able to be embraced and immersed into somebody's home that's from a different culture is just so special. Just to be welcomed into that. And so it's just really cool because I had the opportunity to go to Colombia with her and my boyfriend, and so that was just really cool to, be able to experience that as well. But that was a while ago. But yeah, so I just really like experiencing other people's cultures and their different traditions. Like, she doesn't own a microwave. That's not necessarily a Colombian thing, but she just doesn't believe in it. Anyway, we talked about different like family things, how her mother is getting older in age and she doesn't want her to live with her. They wouldn't get along well. Meanwhile, a lot of Hispanic families, that is the case where the grandparents already do live with their children, and so then they're being taken care of. But in this case, it's a different story, more so Americanized. But anyway, so feelings and reactions, just being able to feel welcomed. And I think that it's really important to share a meal with people from other cultures, especially if they're the ones making the meal for you. And something that I've learned, because I got to go overseas and spend 11 months in 1 month in different countries. And so one thing that was common in almost every single country was it's rude to not finish the food that's given to you. So I continue to do that, unfortunately, here because I feel like it's still ingrained in me. But anyway, as a counselor, I think that it's important to just see the joys of tradition, different family dynamics, because every family is different. South America is so much different than Mexico, and so it's just important to recognize those. They all speak different Spanish, like things like that it's important to recognize. And excuse me. And so, obviously it's a really important thing to recognize that Hispanics do cherish their family. They're very family oriented, and so it's important to be able to see that as a counselor and understand that from a different perspective as well. So that is everything. I hope I covered it all, but thanks for listening. So if I was to repeat this entire assignment, I don't think that I would do anything differently. I feel like that I was pretty immersed into the culture. Maybe I would speak Spanish a little bit while ordering my tacos, or make conversation with the employees at the taco place. But other than that, I don't think that I would do anything different. And then my reaction into the whole entire experience was good. I think that everybody should do this, not just like counseling or counseling students. in like graduate programs, but I think that everybody, even in like undergraduate, but even like adults, like older adults, just because I know that a lot of them are so set in their ways that they just like don't see things from other people's perspectives at all, or don't care to. And I think that that's, one of the bigger problems in our country, is that we just don't really care to see things from other people's perspectives, and we just think that it's our way or the highway. But anyway, I really appreciate this entire experience, and I think that it's important for everybody to do, and not just graduate students in a counseling program.